Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. As always, this is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank you for choosing to fly over the friendly airwaves with us here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Now, without further ado, let me go ahead and delve into the topic du jour for today, because this one's a big one. We at the Wright Flyer have always been against hypocrisy. Going back to our first episode, which aired on September 11th of 2015, we always said that we would give credit where credit was due and that we would call out even those whom we once supported when they went astray. The reason that we would do this is because intellectual honesty is something that is both necessary and proper in analysis and in the practice of law and in the world of politics as well. Whenever you have inconsistency, such as what you've got with the Republican Party time and again, with John McCain, with the Bush clan before that, with Mitt Romney, you wound up with a system that just didn't work, with a system that always left the people feeling alienated, tricked, lied to, and abandoned. And that's something that we just can't have. And so it is with a frustrating sense of annoyance that I have to do this, because Ted Cruz has doubled down on a stupid position. And Ted, this is certainly a position which you're holding now that could ruin you politically. In fact, it may already have done so. The reason that it could do this, and probably will do this, is because you're going to alienate those who have been looking at the trenches, looking at the way that the salivating graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism have approached this, and they're going to feel betrayed. You, in a sense, have shown yourself to be a political opportunist of the worst sort. And that is unfortunate because it plays into the narrative that your enemies, which you already had more than enough of, had utilized throughout 2016 and throughout your political career. And now it's coming to fruition again. Now, what is it that I'm speaking of? Well, it comes down to something Ted Cruz has said and repeated a fair amount since the beginning of this about what happened a year ago. And that is, he's referring to what transpired 1 year ago at the Capitol as being a terrorist attack. No, Ted, this was not a terrorist attack. The reason it's not a terrorist attack is because the Capitol Police had opened the barricades, had let people in. There was basically these specialized teams of commando types throughout the city on rooftop to rooftop that were basically keeping the city in check. And they, had, of course, had been there because, if you recall, the church that was set on fire during the Summer of Love, during all of the BLM riots, the attempts to storm the White House that get swept up under the rug, they were all in place because there was a lot of insurrectionist violence that was occurring throughout 2020, but it wasn't the way that the media is trying to paint it now, and it's certainly not what occurred on January 6th of 2020, or rather of 2021. Cruz, why are you doing this? Why are you sitting there saying this is a terrorist act and singing the praises of the forces that actually orchestrated the only death that occurred on that day, who was none other than Ashley Babbitt, who was an unarmed woman and a veteran? of the United States Air Force. I don't understand why we're singing the praises of the Capitol Police Force when they were the ones that had opened the barricades. They were the ones that had created the false narrative. They were the ones that had played into the hands of the false propagandist narrative that was spun by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. Why are we doing this? Why are we going down this road? Ted Cruz, you know better than this, or at least you ought to know better than this. But apparently you've been in the upper echelons of government for far too long. Ever since the time you had graduated from law school and had successfully passed the Texas State Bar, you have been working in the echelons of government. Therefore, you've never had to be in the private sector. Now, I'm not passing judgment there. I do government work, too, as a practicing attorney. But what I can say, and what I will say, is that this shocking display that you've put forth to the American public has rightfully earned you some derision from certain figures in the media and on the right-wing media, and it makes you fit the moniker that Trump had given you. Ted, you are either one who has firm convictions and one who believes in the guiding light principle of the clear and concise language of the Constitution, or you are not. I used to think that you were firmly committed to it. The work that you did in Van Orden v. Perry was amazing. You're a fantastic litigator. You're a fantastic constitutional attorney. Which is exactly why I'm curious as to why you would lend credence to a false narrative that gives the Democrats exactly what they want. The frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists are attempting to use Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to prohibit Trump from running for office again. And again, I don't care whether he runs for office again or not. But in the arena of politics, we know that 9 times out of 10, perception matters more than reality. Because perception and illusion and propaganda and narratives are what the game spins on. The weakness of the right is that we don't know how to necessarily connect to the emotional, because we tend to err on the side of logic. We tend to believe in reason. That comes from the Enlightenment era. And while 9 times out of 10 that is certainly what I would consider a strength, it can also equally be a weakness. It can be a weakness when it serves to be like having blinders, blinding us to the overarching picture and to the overarching reality that we have to deal with, and that is, unfortunately, what you appear to be doing, Cruz. What occurred a year ago today was not a terrorist act. If it was a terrorist act, if it was befitting of the narrative that the left is attempting to foist upon us and that the legacy media is attempting to foist upon us, there would have been countless numbers of deaths. But to sit there and say that it was an organized terrorist attack is bovine excrement. It's idiocy. And I cannot, for the life of me, figure out why you would go down this line, unless your political aspirations make you think that there is some benefit that you'll gain from this. If that is the case, then you are reading the political tea leaves completely wrong. And no, I do not see in this instance how you would be playing 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional, or even 6-dimensional chess, because you're not. You are essentially falling into the false narrative that Don Lemon and the CNN wrecking crew would have. Cruz, you're smarter than this. You are. At least you used to be. I don't know. I don't know if it was the beating that you took in the 2016 election cycle that made you lose your way, or whether it's just political opportunism. And at this point, I don't rightly care. I don't. I've always been very level-headed about how I do this. 3 strikes and you're out. Oh, and Cruz, don't think that you're smarter than me on this one either. I, too, am a licensed practicing attorney. I, too, have gone to extreme and lofty heights at a young age. And I, too, understand how government and law intertwine and work. Unlike you, however, I am not going to view the government as a get-rich-quick scheme or as a way to pad my future. Yes, I am using the government to earn money, but that is through the entrepreneurialism that my company has done. And it is through private sector efforts. You, on the other hand, have not once worked in the private sector, and it shows. What we need now is not giving strength to the false narrative that they are attempting to weave. We do not need to be giving the left any arrows for their quiver of arrows. Rather, we should be doing what Ron DeSantis is doing, where he's sitting there saying that Floridians don't give a damn about the anniversary of January 6th, and that this is a nauseating display, and that, you know, it's a Charlie Foxtrot. And it is, in the military lingo, a Charlie Foxtrot. Unfortunately, the nauseating display of which DeSantis was speaking is not just limited to the left. The statements you have made here prove you're weak and feckless. And that's not good. That's certainly not what I want in my senator. And yes, Teddy boy, you ought to pay attention to this one, because I vote. Not only do I vote, I'm politically connected in Texas too. So stop and consider the actions you have taken. I think you ought to probably be going out and doing a little bit of damage control. Because, as for me, that ship has already sailed. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me a third time, there ain't gonna be a third time. The third time has come and gone. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what your strategy is. If you're attempting to placate the left, you cannot placate them. They are playing out of the Marxist Communist Handbook. There is no placating Marxists and communists. There is only defeating Marxists and communists. One would think that you, having come from Cuban heritage, would understand that. Apparently not. Apparently not. This is a pretty big disaster, Ted. It's a pretty big one. I'm going to say this right now. Come the next election where you're up, because I know it's not this one. Or maybe it is this one. Let me double check and make sure I'm right on that. You know, you've made me mad enough. Let me dig. When are you up for election, Teddy boy? Is that what this comes down to? See, your term ends in 2025, so no, my initial prospect was right. Well, 2025's coming up fast. And if you think that I've forgotten, or that I'll ever forget, you've got another thing coming. Ladies and gentlemen, each and every one of us has to reject the narrative that the left is putting out there, because they are doing this to create a false narrative in which they can attempt to double down on making our constitutional republic into a complete and total dictatorship. All one has to do is look at the way they have run the upper echelons of this federal government since the 2020 election cycle. There is no reason to roll over for them because they are unpopular. There is no reason to present them with an olive branch because they damn sure wouldn't do it for us. No. Ted, you've made a major mistake, and that's where I'm going to leave it now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to our state-of-the-art radio program. We appreciate it. Please do take care, and I'll see you again next time. Take care.